Hey everyone, welcome back to the Thoughtstream, episode 3. This is Victor, aka Roland Wright, and today I'm joined by, coincidentally, another Alex. Welcome, Alex.
I
Now, some people may know you as Sky Guy on Discord, correct?
Yeah, Sky Guy 777.
Awesome.
Um, so I'm not really on there too much, but you'll see me poke my head up every once in a while.
Yeah, and so for some context, Alex has been a part of Exodus for just as long as I have. He's missed only a couple days of the tournament within that time period. About in 2 years, you've missed only about 4 days, right?
Yeah, about 3 or 4 days or so.
Yeah, and he went to the qualifiers 2018. You placed in top 8 at the Worlds 2018.
Yes, I placed seventh place, and I'm lucky I even got that because it was a terrible, terrible deck.
Yeah, you were running. Were you running Carsir?
I was running a Symmetry deck with
Oh, okay.
the three card three combo. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
So
thought it was the most clever thing in the world. I don't know why.
it's certainly gotten better this season, but yeah, last season's pretty hard. It's pretty impressive to get seventh with that.
True,
Um,
true.
so yeah, today's episode is it's coming in a little shorter. Last episode I mentioned that these would probably be monthly, but we have some more stuff to talk about, and I'd also like to have Alex on. So getting a little early treat here. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about a new blog post 3 that Existence Games put out on Saturday, May 11th, 2019, as well as an ICV2 press article detailing some stuff about set 5. We'll talk about some other things like what decks are hot, Alex's thoughts on set 5 and season 3. And if we have some time, we'll talk about some Harmony rares. So let's just jump into it. Blog Post 3 released on Saturday, and in that blog post, Existence Games has essentially apologized for Blog Post 2, kind of based off of the negative feedback around it in regards to how it was a little condescending and kind of sending a mixed message. They clarified that Blog Post 2 was to be directed at some specific locations that were using only the same decks every week. They were not changing at all. They weren't experimenting at all. They were just using strict deck lists. Um, the problem I still kind of have with Blog Post 2 and even Blog Post 3 now is ultimately everything's still kind of poorly worded. Even Blog Post 3 kind of blames people for misinterpreting or misunderstanding Blog Post 2 when I think it's mostly a wording issue on their part. What are your thoughts, Alex?
All I know is that there was a secret test, and I failed. I feel terrible.
Yeah.
If I had known, I would have brushed up. Oh my god.
Yeah, and they clarified that our location, which is the Fresno scene, was we're really experimental. They did clarify that it's not our scene that they were talking to. I still think there are definitely better ways to kind of go about how they talked about all this stuff. More so that they could have just said we're noticing some areas aren't doing this. I don't know. As I mentioned in the previous blog post, I do think trying to motivate creativity is something that falls more on the player base than the creators, but I can totally understand why they might be frustrated because you have other scenes which are experimenting, you have a ton of diversity. They found lots of really viable B tier and A tier decks to play with, and then you have one or two areas that might only be using the same decks every week, which kind of stinks.
Yeah, I mean, there's very little incentive to experiment these days. I mean, why would you, like we've talked about before, why would you ever want to change your deck list? Even though it's the same deck list every week, why would you want to change it if it at least gets you top three every week?
Yeah, and in our local scene, a lot of people kind of change up their decks just to have fun. As Alec Horchata and I talked about, for some people the fun is winning, right? And for some people the fun is that experimenting. So it is kind of a difficult topic to kind of go around. I'm glad Existence Games ultimately kind of apologized, but yeah, I still think there's definitely a lot of room for improvement with these blog posts. They did mention that going forward with potentially season 3, I don't know if this is confirmed or if they were just kind of speculating, but they want to do this concept called the deck bounty or card bounty or something like that, where essentially every week or month or whatever, they're going to choose a card, a bounty card, and anyone who makes a deck using that card can get a bonus point or something like that. I think 1 point is reasonable. So you could do something like we talked, Alex, you and I talked about, Shores of the Starry Blockade, right? Like, okay, here's a card that isn't awful, but there's just really not a lot of room to run it in any kind of deck. But if you're getting a bonus point for experimenting with it, you could have a fun week. You might not win, but at least you're going to get an extra point. You get to experience something new. So I think the bounty card system, it does have some kind of issues. Like, there are definitely cards I don't think you could choose for this, but ultimately I think it's just a fun way to kind of get extra points and mess around. What are your thoughts?
I mean, there is an easy way around it where you could just build your 20 card beatdown deck and just splash the one bounty card in there.
Yeah.
Just get top three, and there you go.
Yeah, certainly. And also, you could have someone who is genuinely trying to win tournaments and they're losing and they're only getting 1 point every week, but then you have someone who's intentionally losing but they're running a bounty card. So they're getting 2 points a week and you're going to fall behind. So there are certainly some issues here, and like you said, a 20 card beatdown deck slotting in one dead card isn't necessarily going to kill the deck, especially if multiple people are doing it. But I don't know. There's still a lot of time before that happens, and this hasn't been confirmed. It was just kind of an idea. I think they have, and I do definitely want to see something like that. I do think it's kind of cool. So yeah, with that
It
said,
definitely is a great idea.
yeah,
And yeah.
yeah. So with that said, there's really not much else to talk about blog post 3, I think. Let's go ahead and talk about the ICV2 article that also just came out. And that article kind of doesn't really give us a ton of new information. It does give us 2 new sneak peeks, two new cards that we hadn't seen before in the magazine or anything like that. And it also kind of confirms that common and uncommon cards are going to have a white border to them. And those
It also talks about the speed of creature abilities being adjusted.
That's very true. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a bigger deal as time goes on. I think both kind of ways made sense. Creatures being slower kind of made sense. Creatures being the same speed makes sense. I think creatures being slower definitely was more to kind of memorize, though. Like, if you're just a casual player, having to remember that cards have different speeds is a little bit more to wrap your head around. Now that everything's the same speed, you don't really have that issue. It's going to make cards like Tanglewood Snag, much more useful, and kind of so on along those lines. So let's go ahead and talk about the 2 new cards that were shown.
Yes.
So we first off have Smoke Stream, the perfect mimicry. You want to read that effect, Alex, if you have it on?
All right. The ability is False Thoughtstream. While this creature is on the field, whenever an opposing creature enters play, you may force it to immediately battle this creature.
Yep.
And it also has an afterthought ability. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. And then its afterthought is that your opponent can't cause more than one of your afterthoughts to leave play at a time. So once again, another confirmation that there will be ways to remove afterthoughts from the game, which is kind of obviously needed. I think, I actually really, we talked about this at the tournament. I really like this ability as a way to interrupt on summon abilities. It's pretty good.
Yeah, the one failing I see as a slight failing is that it's always going to be the ability at the bottom of the stack. So them adjusting the creature speeds really doesn't affect this card.
Yeah,
because it's always
in regards
going
to
to be
Symmetry, sure, but it not in regards to on summon abilities.
true. That's very true.
It's essentially a built-in Portal's Collide to some degree.
Yeah, and it will intercept your, like you said, creature abilities on summon creature abilities before they get to activate.
Yeah, this can be really brutal against a lot of decks. I think Shardfolk more than anything, Angel Beatdown, their abilities are very individual. They don't form like a cohesive strategy. But when you're playing against someone like Shardfolk or Treefolk, even Treefolk Reveal and stuff like that, it the Smokestream's ability will happen before the on summons. Let's say I'm playing, Bastion to reveal, some big cards in my hand. Well, they respawn to Smokestream. Bastion dies in the duel. Bastion's ability never gets to go off. So, and this can affect, any card, any creature that's similar to that. I think Shardfolk suffers even more. I think its Afterthought ability is okay. It's not terrific. It doesn't look like it would be an ability that stacks kind of in any regard. Um, so like I'm not sure if you would ever run two of these. I mean, like it's certainly a card you can consider running only one of. Its ability isn't like amazing. You don't have to run two of it to win the game.
Granted, though, if you do turn this into an afterthought, it's then out of your deck. So when you recycle, your deck will be smaller. It'll be a little easier to get to resources.
Right, and that's ultimately what makes Afterthought and Chronos in general so terrifying is they can become an extremely consistent deck more than anything we've seen. Uh, I think we're really going to see, for that reason, you put this into play, right? You put it on a pile of 2 or 3 or whatever. Your opponent puts like, as an example, let's say they put a Lana in play on a pile of 3. You just force them to run into each other. They both die, but now Smokestream is out of your recycle. You now have its Afterthought ability, which is all right. It's a pretty good one to start the game with, I think, at least. And now your deck's smaller. And like if you're running 10 Chronos and you have 10 of them in the Afterthought zone, especially with this guy's ability preventing them preventing you from losing a bunch of them at once, your deck's now only 10 cards. And depending on what those 10 cards are, like you can really get a ton of stuff done very fast.
Right. Um, One small thing that you mentioned, I'm sorry, Afterthought Zone? Is this been a confirmed change to the battlefield?
I mean, I haven't seen any cards that reference Afterthought, like calling it a zone, but Existence did confirm, that when they leave and they stay in play as an afterthought, they are considered an afterthought. I think calling something an afterthought zone, it's just an easier way for us to discuss it because if I'm playing, I'm just gonna put my afterthought cards to the side. You know what I mean?
Right.
Sorry, and then they showed one other new card here, which was the what is it? Is this Wolf guy? Wander
It
Wolf,
is.
the Interfere.
Yes.
So this is also Chrono Wolf. Why don't you go ahead and read that ability?
As I click over to it, 1 second. Yes. The ability is Endless Infection. This creature may attack blank piles of energy.
Yeah, and
And
blank piles don't deal damage.
blank piles don't deal damage to it.
Yeah, and the first time your opponent damages your life points each turn, you take one less damage. That's an afterthought ability as well. I'm in love with this card, dude.
It's honestly, this is so beautiful.
Yeah, like the artwork is great. The ability and afterthought ability are pretty darn sick. I mean, I love the ability because we talked about this. I think it's very well balanced. It takes away this safety net. Like we're in kind of a situation right now where if you have a blank pile of energy on play, you're feeling pretty safe. Your opponent can leech it or destroy it or whatever, but unsummon doesn't target it, right? So a very common thing is like turn one you don't draw any creatures, so you put a blank pile of 3 in or something like that. This now can just straight up destroy energy and massive. I mean, this card goes great with things like reversion. Um, and even like Glimpse of the Sanctuary, stuff like that. The afterthought of this card, I think, is also really neat, especially if you're running 2 copies of this and you have 2 copies in your afterthought zone. You now take 2 less damage the first time your opponent hits you every turn, which can really add up.
Yeah. The only thought that I had when I first saw this was, if my opponent has no creatures on the field and they have blank energies, why would I ever want to use this ability. I would just want to hit direct.
Yeah, it's definitely like a trade-off kind of thing where you kind of consider where you want the game to go. Hitting blank pile, as someone else mentioned, like the kind of most common situation you're going to see here is if your opponent has a 5 power creature and this guy's on 3 power, and you don't want to just attack your opponent's 5 power creature. You might attack their blank energies instead to still make use of that attack. Which, hey, it could even potentially force out a chains, which would be nice, or even something else. Um, the For me personally, if my opponent goes first, they play a blank pile of 3, and I go second, and I put this guy on a pile of 3, I will probably go for the energy instead to try to snowball the game and build momentum. Because the 3 damage is obviously nice, but if I can start to make them starve for energy and punish them for playing blank piles, depending on what kind of deck you're running, that's very tempting.
Yeah, and imagine they're a bit skittish about putting blank piles down, and
Mm-hmm.
then instead of you just they hold all their energy in their hand, and then you vortex it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the only reasonable alternative at this point is if you're opening turn 1 and you don't have any creatures in hand, depending on what kind of deck you're running, you might want to do like a pile of 1, pile of 1, pile of 1.
Yeah, several piles of one so that there's multiple targets.
Right, exactly.
So now you're going against something like an energy flood.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely, yeah, it's a pretty interesting card. I think he really makes both players make a lot of decisions, and I think that's really cool. I really like seeing cards that do that. Um, so
There's
yeah,
definitely tons of potential with this card.
yeah, for sure. And then once again, I think its afterthought ability is pretty darn good. It's not mind blowing. I One of the things about the afterthought or just Chronos in general is they're kind of one or the other. Either the ability or afterthought ability is going to be pretty good, and then the other one's going to be all right. Um, these 2 cards we've looked at today, both of them have pretty darn good abilities, and then their afterthought abilities, they're decent. I think Wanderwolf's afterthought ability is better than the previous card, just in the sense that it's always going to be useful to you. The other card is kind of reliant on your opponent having something that removes afterthoughts, which not everybody's going to probably put in their deck. But this guy's always useful. I mean, it literally does not matter who you play. This Wanderwolf is always going to be helping you. Because he's going to think about it. If, let's say, you Existence of Unknown Origin down to 1 and play a Star Struggle, he blocks the Star Struggle damage. Let's say you
Yeah,
play a Treeforge complex, he blocks one of the complex's damage.
you
Yes.
only take 1 damage. Yeah,
Yeah. So, and if you have 2 of these, he completely mitigates symmetry damage in general. Um, I think it's a really cool card. I'm really excited for this. The thing I was telling Existence Games today was that I really, really want to play Chrono because I do think they're going to be a lot of fun. My fear is everyone's going to want to go Chrono, especially if they end up being just such a powerful new archetype. Because so far they look like they have a lot of really good beatdown going for them. They don't have much synergies between themselves. The only exception is Rota, the Flickering Facade. He or that card has, I think there's like maybe 1 or 2 other Chronos that kind of can send energy to the bottom of the deck to him. So that's kind of a synergy. But for the most part, a lot of these Chrono creatures seem to have very similar to Angels, very just I'm on my own. I can fit in any deck kind of thing. Like this card, Wanderwolf, could fit in any kind of beatdown deck, right?
yeah, it is. It's kind of, I don't want to say disappointing, but the fact that the next competitive scene is going to be you either have to pick Chronos or anything else. Just imagine if you could mix this with Beatdown, with Angel
Well,
Beatdown.
that's only for the 2v2s. For the 1v1s, you can mix them.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So
Then never mind.
yeah, and my
Just
my assumption is we'll probably see a half and half kind of split for those tournaments. So some tournaments will be half tournaments will be 2v2 and half will be 1v1.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm definitely excited.
Yeah, I think as Horchata said, they're really good at building hype, and I think a lot of these cards are very hype cards. Um, I can't say that they're overpowered, but I can say that we're not seeing any direct synergy besides the Rota synergy. Hopefully, the Symmetry that support that comes for Chronos might foster more of that. The only tricky thing is like the Chrono cards already seem pretty darn strong in their own bubble. To add Symmetry support that synergizes well with them in addition to their own individual abilities seems like it might be overkill. Like imagine if Wanderwolf is in play and then you play a card that says if you have a Chrono in play, like both you and your opponent, I don't know, or like even both you and your opponent add 2 energy to a blank pile of energy or start a blank pile of energy, then you can just attack with Wanderwolf. Like there's a lot of potential for Symmetries to do some great things, but I think it might push it a little too far. I don't know. All I know is I don't want too many people running Chronos. I want to be the only one running
Yeah.
Chronos. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think a really interesting kind of deck that a lot won't. I don't think it's going to be competitive, but is the Erota kind of deck, which seems like it'll be it's very much its own thing. You can't fit Erota into just any random deck. And just for context, that's the new Chrono creature that when it's removed from the deck, either by drawing, discarding, whatever, it immediately goes to the bottom of the deck instead, and face up, and it's like its own thing. It's not in the deck anymore, and every turn you feed it energy from your field to it, and then once your deck runs out and you see a Rota, he enters play with all that energy. I think it's a really cool card concept. It's very unique. I mean, I haven't seen anything like that in any game. The downside is it seems pretty weak. It doesn't seem, as I told Horchata, like it's not giving you anything. It's just he's not generating energy that goes to him. He's taking energy that you already have in play that goes to him. And it says each turn, which means even after your opponent's turn, you have to do it.
Yeah. Imagine in a Rota deck going against a Wanderwolf deck. You would just stop them from feeding a Rota by attacking the energy piles so
Yeah.
that they have nothing to feed the monster sleeping under your deck.
Yeah, very true, very true. But the sad thing is Rota comes out, I'll unsummon it. Like, all right, there goes all the energy that I've been feeding him. So I don't know. It'd be really cool to see like a Symmetry that really like supports him. I think if anything, if we talk about like, oh man, Symmetry, Chrono Symmetry support would be too much. I think seeing a Rota specific Symmetry would be really where it's at. Like something that says like, oh, if you have a Rota in play, you can make a Chrono. You have like Symmetry immune or something like that. So that way he doesn't just get unsummoned immediately or something like that. They do have in the magazine they did tease. We haven't talked about this on the podcast, but they did tease a Symmetry uncommon card called Chains of the Ancient One, which is kind of directly tied to a Rota. And it's essentially send the top 3 cards of your main deck to the graveyard. You may add 1 energy from your energy deck to a creature in play or beneath your deck. So the idea here is you're self-milling to try to get a Rota to show up, and also you get to add an energy to them. So it's kind of like an endowment. Well, it's essentially an endowment, but you're also milling. It's like an endowment for a Rota. It's not going to fit in every deck, but still, that's an idea of some kind of Rota support.
Yeah, you can even with that deck add a couple Starborn Outbreaks so that you're constantly reshuffling your graveyard back into your deck, so that eventually
he comes into play with like 30 energy on him. It's like I've been saving him down there the whole game. Yeah, but I think, like I said, I think that really hinges on if there's any additional Symmetry support. Because I will not invest that much into one card, one creature.
If it's that's right. Bombed. You're only allowed 1 copy in your deck. I forgot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. True.
While we're kind of talking about set 5, there were some other cards we didn't talk about in the first podcast. I guess we can right now. First off, one card that I'm pretty stoked about not only because it looks just really cool, but it's just a really good symmetry card, is a Dimension in Ruin. This is a rare symmetry. It states that all types of creatures except Chrono deal 1 less damage during battle this turn. You may destroy 1 energy into play. So this is a Chrono deck's super Cataclysm, essentially.
Yeah.
Because if you're running Chrono, its debuff doesn't affect you. You still get to destroy an energy in play. So it's essentially Cataclysm, but with the added effect that it can make non-Chrono decks weak.
Just mix these 2 of these with 2 of the Wanderwolves and 2 Cataclysms and 2 Leeches and
oh man, yeah, you could really mess with your opponent.
And complete energy denial deck.
Yeah, I think this card more than anything really hurts Flood, primarily like common Angel and Dragon, or even Order. I guess Uncommon Order would struggle from it.
And the promo Guild Warfare that destroys an energy and gives you an energy in your hand.
Yeah, true.
Oh my god.
It also can hurt things like Lazarus, right? Cards that attack more than once. It hurts that one wolf that can only have 1 energy on it, stuff like that. So
I mean, a lot of things hurt that wolf. That's a
It's a very vulnerable card. Speaking of that wolf, actually, that wolf's effect is that it can only have 1 energy. Wanderwolf's afterthought effect is it reduces damage taken by 1. I wonder if like the theme around wolves might have to do with 1 energy. You know what I mean? If they're gonna have like this cohesive theme around them where they always have some kind of effect that interacts with only 1 energy.
That is interesting.
Which will kind of make sense, right? Wolves travel in packs. They're smaller in stature than most things, but their numbers are what make up for it. And maybe like even kind of an assassin play style where they're good at targeting specific things. You have the one wolf that attacks directly. This wolf can attack blank piles of energy. Maybe you have a wolf that comes into play that destroys all 1 energy creatures, something like that. So kind of a cool idea there. Another really interesting card here. I'm not really sure how well this will do. It's the first card that costs 2 energy to activate. And that's Frigid Lightning Well, the Shardfolk Storm creature. Its ability is that you may pay 2 energy when this creature enters play. If you do, your opponent's creature abilities become inactive for the rest of the turn. And this was confirmed. Well, I think it says it right next to it, but this means everything. In your deck, in other zones, and in the play, or wherever you have creature cards, their abilities are inactive for the turn.
So they eventually created a better handbell gravitas.
Yeah, but it's definitely more. So handbell was you essentially have to play a card to play handbell.
Nebula Barrier.
Right, and isn't his thing it only nullifies the abilities of cards in play, too? I think it's only creatures in play. Frigid Lightning Well just shuts down everything that your opponent has. Doesn't require a second card. Does require 2 energy, though, which is a steep price to pay. I mean, let's say your opening hand is this guy, right? You play 3 energy, you can't really play this card because you're going to lose 2 energy and he's not even really going to do much.
If you turn this on turn 1, I would just let it activate and then respond with a leech.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
it's gone.
Or even just respond with a leech first and then like it kills itself.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
But what's really funky about it is you have to be playing it, which means your opponent. It's not your opponent's turn usually, and you. I think it. Let's see. It says when it enters play, so it's not unsummoned. So which means that you can play this on your opponent's turn using the same way you do handbell, right? So you can play Nebula Wood Barrier and still activate Frigid Lightning Well's effect. Arguably, I think that is the stronger version of it in regards to impact, because if you're playing this on your turn, how many creatures have abilities that are defensive in nature? There's not a lot. I mean, you have like Castle, you have Paladin's Parable, but like
you could argue Lantern Leaf Lore.
The Lantern Leaf for sure, definitely.
Yeah.
But like if you look at Treefolk and Shardfolk, this isn't going to do anything. It's only its best use at that point is to play it in your opponent's turn, which at that point you're paying the 2 energy, and you're playing an extra card to put it in a play on your opponent's turn, and you have to hope it doesn't get destroyed or unsummoned or reversion or whatever. So it's the first. I think 2 energy for this effect kind of makes sense, and it is definitely a card that gets better over time, right? As more threats emerge, but it is a pretty big commitment for sure.
And if this is the beginning of cards that have effects that activate when they come into play, regardless if it's by summon or by via symmetry, I mean, this gives me hope for the future. You're like, I want to see more things like this.
Yeah, more counter cards, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I do think it's kind of a missed opportunity. This is a Shardfolk Storm. I think it's a missed opportunity that its ability doesn't interact with the Shardfolk mechanic at all. I could see like you can pay if you pay 1 frozen energy, you resolve this effect or something like that. You know what I mean? Like this is why I think beatdown is so prevalent still, is that you have all these archetypes, and Shardfolk and Treefolk more than anything have a very specific mechanic associated with them, but then you still get a lot of cards that don't actually utilize that mechanic. Set 4 did a great job at doing that. All the Shardfolk and Treefolk cards that were released totally synergize with their mechanics, right?
Right.
But Frigid Lightning Well being a Shardfolk, it could have been any creature type at this point, right? Its ability does not care.
Right. Is it a Shardfolk?
It's a Shardfolk Storm, yeah.
Shardfolk Storm. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of weird that to make it a Shardfolk and then it has no synergy with Shardfolks.
It's certainly an interesting card. I think this will definitely see more play than Handbill ever did. Just because you don't need to run Nebula Wood Barrier to benefit from it. And if Castle and Paladin's Parable and other cards still are major influences in the game in Season 3, I think I could definitely see people trying to make this work. I think you definitely need energy generation if you're running this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Which Paladin's Parable then will seriously be useful for this then.
Yeah, ironically.
Yeah.
Endowment's always one of those cards where like I look at it, I'm like, this should be bad, but for some reason, for some people, it actually works. So I think there's definitely a case to be made where you could definitely run this card in like a deck that has like double Leech, double Glimpse, double Endowment, and still get some pretty good use out of it.
Particularly talking about that 1/2 Lantern Leaf Lord deck I made was what you're talking about. The one that I think you mentioned in the first episode.
I was actually thinking about there was one deck a younger player played against you. He was using a Harmony Rare also, but like he would just, his turn would just be he would draw 3 cards, and then it would be like a combination of Energize, Endowment, and Leech, and then that would be his turn, and somehow it was working. Like he was just getting so much energy, and then. Yeah. I think that it's an interesting card in that regard. So, we also didn't talk about in the first episode. We didn't talk about Lingus. Yeah, that's Lingus. And see, this is another weird thing. Like, the Shardfolk Storm card has no synergies with freezing, but then Lingus, which is a new Treefolk card, does have synergy with Reveal, which is, it's a rare Treefolk creature. When this creature enters play, which once again is summoned or through card effect, or whenever it attacks, you may reveal the top and bottom card of your main deck and draw 1 energy.
So that's 3 ways to activate this card's effect.
Yeah, and you want to know what's bananas is you play this card, draw an energy, attack with it, draw an energy. I mean, you're drawing 2 energy off this card in one turn. And
Reveal just gets better and better.
You play this card, reveal the top and bottom card of your deck. Oh, I hit a mushroom. Okay, attack. I hit another mushroom. Like it really is a super strong card, man. It's really good. If you somehow, the odds are really low, But if you somehow your top and bottom card are both mushroom, this card can do 4 damage. And each mushroom gives you an energy, and this gives you an energy, so you're drawing like 6 energy. It's ridiculous. Ironically, I think he goes really well with Frigid Lightning Well.
He really does, yeah.
You're just generating so much energy with this card.
Imagine just putting it into play, reversing it, putting it into play, reversing it.
Geez.
Nebula Wood Barrier.
Yeah.
And then attack.
Yeah, I think
So
at that point you
2, 4,
should
6.
just be running Endowment, though.
Possible 8 damage in one turn.
What's cool is with Time Glyph, you could do Lingus, right? You go, okay, I'm going to go creature phase, play Lingus, gain the energy. This is assuming Time Glyph is in play. Attack, draw another energy. Then I'll go into energy phase and play all those energy. And then in turn. Because then normally if you attack, if you play a creature and attack, you can't play energy anymore. You're already past that.
See, okay, I'm glad you brought up Time Glypha, because I had an argument with a friend who also goes to our locals, and I had brought up the idea of starting the turn with your end phase, so that things unfreeze. And his immediate argument was, no, then your turn ends and it's my turn.
No, yeah.
It literally says I can order the phases any way I want, and he would not let it go.
Yeah, you're very correct. Starting with your end phase will not end your turn. As I've spoken with Existence Games, it's perfectly fine to start with end phase, then move into your energy phase or whatever. So Lingus is a really good card. Speaking of Tree Folk, we also have Carsir, the Maniacal Madness. Carsir returning for his 3rd set, boy. He is now a Tree Folk Chrono with the ability Energy Lunacy. When this creature attacks another creature, it deals double damage. It is destroyed along with all energy attached after any battle. And then it has an afterthought ability that if you control at least one common, uncommon, and rare Chrono in play, you don't lose life points due to your costs, effects, or abilities. So I'll go out there and say that I think its Afterthought ability is probably the weakest one we've seen.
Yeah.
I think pulling off those 3, that condition at one time, and for it to matter, I mean, you have to be playing someone who's using life point damagers. It's not easy to do.
I mean, if you're going to constantly search your deck with Carter and Roaring Sanctuary, which both require you to pay a life point to search, I assume that could help you in some way.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure to what end, but definitely you've used it that way.
Yeah, even like Tanglewood Snag, I guess, stuff like that. But it's just to have a common, uncommon, and rare Chrono in play. It has to be Chrono, so it can't be used in other decks. And for your opponents to not just, do something to them the moment you try to trigger the effect. And even then, so far, all the life point loss cards are primarily just 1 life point. So, I don't know. It's very funky. I think the only exception would be the Carsir, the latest one, the secret rare that you can pay any number of life points to move that amount of energy to him. So I think the idea here is this Carsir synergizes with that Carsir. As far as its actual ability, it's essentially a suicide bomb, right? You play them on a pile 2, attack a 4-power creature, they both die.
I feel like that's a common theme with Carsir, is that it just ends up killing itself for a massive effect.
Yeah, very true, very true. I don't think this ability on him is tremendously good. It's when this creature attacks another creature, meaning, when you attack directly, it's not really going to do a whole lot. It's just going to do whatever his energy normally is. He also dies, even if he survives the battle, he also dies. I mean, the tricky thing is for him to survive the battle, he would have had to have more energy than them in the first place, which means that his ability wasn't even necessary to double the damage. So it's a very kind of weird card in that regard. I think it should have just been when he attacks, he deals double damage. So that way he benefits from attacking directly, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I it definitely makes it. His main effect definitely makes it easier to become an afterthought,
Yeah, I
since
agree.
you just
But
battle once
but
and
even
he's not an
then,
afterthought.
though, like if he's a 2 power creature and he's attacking a 4 power creature, he'd die anyway. The
Yeah.
blowing up thing is literally only if he's attacking a weaker creature than him, which kind of sucks. I mean, yeah, it is to force him into being an afterthought, but it just it feels kind of janky. I think it really should have probably just been direct damage. Because I don't see his afterthought ability isn't really good enough to warrant blowing him up.
It makes me think that his effect should have been any extra energy that he had on him
Mm-hmm.
would spill over to
Oh
direct
yeah,
damage.
that's also very true. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
would have been pretty good. Let's see. I think there's maybe
May I pick a creature? I don't know if you've
yes.
picked one. It's the one at the very, very end.
Yep, have not talked about him
Vernigus,
yet.
Vernigus the Molecular Mockery.
That's
That is a tongue twister.
yeah, and that's the second secret rare that was teased out of 8.
Yes, yes. And its ability reads as follows. This creature is every creature type. While this creature is in play, once per turn, you may discard one card from hand to select one creature on the field. That creature loses its ability, and this creature gains it until the end of the turn. And its afterthought is creatures on your side of the field are chrono in addition to their other types. There's a possibility if the combo that I mentioned earlier, then you put one Venegis on the field, if that's game in one shot. It'd be a huge combo, granted, but
Oh, well,
um,
like he just combos with so much. It's a really good card. I think it's pretty from how I feel. I do think he's pretty balanced. He only I would argue downside is that he fits into almost every deck because he essentially can become a third copy of a card. Or I'll Vernicious and copy Sierra's ability. Now I have essentially an extra one in play, right? Um,
right.
he yeah he just has so many insane things, and because you can copy your opponent's creatures too.
Yeah, you can just steal the Lantern Leaflor's ability
Yep,
of not being able to be affected by symmetries.
yep, yeah. You can steal a lot. I, yeah, he's just a really good card. Um, Actually, going back to what I just said, you actually probably couldn't steal your Sierras or Carsir ability. If your opponent is playing a Symmetry to get rid of one of those 2 cards, and you steal the ability, they'll just redirect the Symmetry to him, right?
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think um, when you're looking at anything that is not an on summon ability, yeah, oh yeah, the Carsir ability is on summon too, so that wouldn't even really work. But if you're looking at anything that's not an unsummon ability, once you resolve it, just copy it. So like, Castle. I'll attack with Castle. Okay, he lives with 1 energy. Now I'll have Vernicious copy Castle's ability, and he'll live with 1 energy. Or Lazarus double attacks. Okay, steal Lazarus's ability, double attack. Um,
I did have an idea to play him with Carcery Veil that, as you said before, you pay a life point to move an energy over to him from another creature.
mhm.
Basically, have Carcery Veil use his ability to cut you down some, and then steal the ability with Vernicious to cut you down all the way down to 1 existence Star Struggle.
Yeah, very true. That also works. A little bit
Just
safer than like double carding over and over again.
yeah.
Um, yeah, you could do so much. I mean, he also is like a really hard counter to almost any deck. Like, if you're going against someone with Castle, it's always frustrating, right? Because like the only counter to Castle is things like Leech, Cataclysm, Guild Warfare. Well, now you have Vernicious instead. Oh, you
Discard.
wanna,
Yeah. Just
you
discard one card and then just attack it.
yeah, and that's why I thought Lingus and Reveal is really good with them because they give you energy in hand, which is a commodity that oftentimes you might not get a chance to use, but if you're running Vernicious, it's a perfect discard card. If you're running dragons, it's a on-demand way to trigger that dragon ability that comes in when it's discarded. It doesn't count as the discard itself, but it's just an on-demand way to trigger it. So yeah, I really like him. I think he's going to be very strong. I think we're going to see him. I think he'll. We haven't seen all 8 secret rares. We've only seen 2, or have we seen 3? Have we seen 2? Yeah, we've only seen 2. We don't know what the box topper is yet.
Right.
I have a feeling though that Vernicius might be the strongest one, just because the fact that he just counters and works with everything. I can certainly see a reason not to use him. I mean, it's taking up a deck slot, but and he's a secret rare, right? So it's going to be a little hard to get. But I think he might be the most expensive one. But so far, between him and Time Glypha, they're both really solid secret rares. Which is nice because the previous set, the secret rares were kind of hit or miss, very niche.
Yeah, and once again, it's another chrono that is splashable.
Yep, for sure. It doesn't really synergize. I mean, it does make all your creature types chrono, which ironically enough makes Dimension and Ruin playable in a non-chrono deck. But yeah.
Yeah, I just realized that.
So anyway, all right. So that's pretty much it about ICV2 and some of our talk on Set 5. What's your general thoughts on the afterthought mechanic? How do you feel about it?
My first thought when I like really came to understand how it works was I just need to build a very small symmetry deck and then add these creatures, have them forcibly knock themselves out, become afterthoughts, and now I'm just recycling a symmetry deck half the size.
Yeah, very true. I think that symmetry decks are finally, when we're looking at when set 4 came out, it was like, man, this card really makes symmetry decks stronger. This card also makes symmetry really strong. Wow, this card also makes symmetry really strong. Then we get Existence of Unknown Origins. Man, this card really makes symmetry strong. And then now you have Afterthought, which allows you to essentially permanently mill your deck. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can make a deck really tiny, and when you have double Vortex and then double Glimpse and a bunch of draw cards, I don't think it is insane to speculate that you could very quickly just trigger Treeforge Complex over and over and over again.
Yeah, just make an 18 card afterthought deck and just have just 18 afterthoughts on the field at all times.
Yeah.
Just every turn.
Well, you do need a way to generate energy and draw cards. So you need double Vortex. You're gonna need double Glimpse. Probably gonna need double Leech. You're probably gonna need double Cove. And maybe double Chains. But you don't need any of the other stereotypical draw cards that are iffy, like Traverse the Treetops. I think Owls of the Morning Star is also one. But yeah, you just run the other, you fill the rest of the slots with afterthoughts. And, you also have the card that lets you draw an extra card every turn, which makes it even more consistent to do that stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of strength there.
See, I'm somebody who likes to make decks that aren't really viable. They're just more like to troll because I want to see what kind of fun I can have.
Yeah.
So if I can make a 20 card afterthought deck, just have the entire deck be gone and on the field.
Yeah,
I mean, I would lose, obviously, but just the fact that I did it, just be like, well, how do we rule this?
Yeah, well, and then take a picture of it. Like, hey, this is my deck. It's always face up. My speculation, based off of the new creature that says you can only, your opponent can only remove one card at a time from your afterthought. My speculation is there might be a card that just nukes the entire afterthought zone. That might just say all afterthoughts are sent to the discard, or all of your opponent's afterthoughts are sent to the discard.
And the card will be called Thoughts of in Progress.
Thoughts of Afterthoughts.
There you go.
Thoughts on thoughts on thoughts on thoughts. The tricky thing is like the afterthought destruction kind of idea. I would argue would have been better as a built-in mechanic to the afterthought concept.
Mm.
If you look at freeze, right? The freeze mechanic isn't permanent. It just is like, okay, imagine this. Imagine freeze released as no, when a card's frozen, it's permanently frozen. And the only way to unfreeze it is if you put cards in your deck that unfreeze cards. That would kind of suck because that forces you to run cards, and then if your opponent's not running freeze, then you have these dead cards in your deck. Unfortunately, that's how I kind of feel about Afterthought. Is yeah, this card's now permanently out of the game, but you can get rid of them if you run an anti-Afterthought card. Well, but I don't want to run an anti-Afterthought card because my opponent might not have Afterthoughts, and now it's just a dead card. So that kind of sucks. I would have liked to see that maybe like Afterthoughts only lasts until deck recycle.
It's so funny because I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and once you hit that deck recycle,
they get shuffled back in.
everything gets shuffled back in. You get your deck back.
Yeah, so that way, like, even if I'm not running an anti-afterthought concept, like, you know, it's still naturally doing something, or even like, I mean, you could even do some things like afterthoughts can be removed by your opponent by paying an energy, or either player can remove an energy to destroy an afterthought. Like the idea that you're feeding it the eventide or whatever uh, the land's energy to get rid of it or something like that or satisfy it. But unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing. So we'll see how ultimately the whole thing plays out. But yeah. So moving on, we've talked about Set 5, talked about Afterthoughts, all these things. So let's go ahead and Alex, I'm interested to hear how you kind of view the current season. What decks do you think are currently hot this season? What do you think, everyone should be playing or taking a look at?
For my money, the most consistent thing I've seen is Reveal.
Yeah.
You can play one card and get up to 6 effects off if you're running 2 of each of the current reveal cards. So in one turn, you could bounce 2 energy back, destroy 2 cards in the deck, and deal 2 damage direct.
Yeah.
And then draw what, 6 energy to your hand.
Yep, very true. Reveal does
For
a lot at once with just like Bastion.
yeah, with just Bastion alone. Yeah.
Funnily enough, I was playing your friend today who we had talked about, and
Right.
they were running Reveal, and they'd put Bastion down, reveal that one creature that lets you look through your opponent's deck and take out a card. What would you say is the number one card you should always remove? Like, or what cards would you always remove from that?
To make sure that don't stop my revealing, and that the fact that the reveal mechanic in that deck requires you to play a creature, I would say Vortex
Interesting. I
or
think
Unsummon.
okay, so that's what this person did. Personally, the first card I think I would go after every time would be Cove.
Really?
Yeah, because if I have a Cove in hand, it doesn't matter what card my opponent plays. If it's a Vortex or Unsummon, I can just Cove it. Um,
Although you can't Cove Bastion's effect.
Correct. But if I'm playing if I'm worried my opponent's going to Vortex my hand or Unsummon my Bastion, it doesn't matter because I just Cove the Symmetry. If so, like the person I played, they kept removing my Vortex and my Unsummon. Okay, my deck doesn't rely on those to succeed. It relies on, and ultimately every beatdown deck relies on this, my opponent just not having creatures in play. So if I can get an Unsummon off and, oh, well, I have a Cove in my hand that they never removed from my deck, I can do that. Or in this case, the person I was playing with, like, okay, I'm going to hit you for 7 damage. Well, I have a Chains. You didn't, you focused on removing my Vortex, my Unsummon, but you didn't remove my Coves or my Chains, and so I'm easily able to just kind of stall you out until I draw the Vortex and Unsummon again. I mean, I think you do bring up a really good point. Bastion obviously benefits strongly from having cards in hand. I think if anything, it's a much easier decision if your opponent doesn't run Vortex.
Yeah, the big weakness of that is that you kind of want to hold all those cards in your hand so that when you play Bastion, everything goes off.
Yeah.
So that's my main thought about like getting Vortex out of the way. Um, but at the same time, if you're removing the two Vortexes out of the deck, it's for sure not in their hand. So you really have to, like you said, the code maybe might be a better choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a hard decision. The Symmetry toolbox is so strong because of how many threats it presents. And this is partly why like combo decks are like Sierra's OTK and Carsir OTK are so hard to play because Vortex ultimately exists. Vortex shuts down all combo decks. It's just a huge threat to them. So
I
that
mean, a turn one Vortex
yeah,
literally nukes every deck.
correct. Yeah, it turn one Vortex is probably the worst I think experience you can have playing the game. I can't. I mean, the only other thing I could think of is if you're at 10, your opponent's at 1, and they existence in Star Struggle or something like that, or existence in Treeforge. But besides that, Vortex on turn 1, when let's say you do have a Cove, you're pitching an early game Cove. It's going to cost you an energy, so your first turn's only going to have 2 energy in play. It's not crazy to think your opponent might just leech one of them. So now your opponent's going to end up with 4 energy. You only have 1, and your opponent's still going to vortex at the end of the turn. Like, and then if they follow it up with a vortex turn 2, like, it's just they're once that snowball starts, it's very hard to like pull yourself out of it. Um,
Yeah.
but so reveal aside, do you have any other kind of top picks for the season?
That is a
Really?
good question. That is a good question because I love so many of the decks, and I think a lot of our locals has a lot of experimentation.
Yeah,
Reveal I see has having the most consistent effects. Um, I always say don't take my uh, don't take me for like someone who would maybe know uh, a lot on this topic, because my decks and a lot of my decks are very either luck based or risk based, or just they
yeah.
require some kind of leap.
Yeah, you're not usually building a deck with being hyper efficient. I think
Yeah,
personally, I agree with you. I think Reveal is definitely an A tier deck. I would say that Angel Beatdown and Shardfolk Beatdown are right next to it in terms of consistency and strength.
definitely. Not even using the Galaxy Tide rares, just the
Yeah.
CC rares are so good.
Yes. Yeah.
They can
Uh,
just make a Converging Chasms beatdown, and it's wonderful.
yeah. Angel Beatdown definitely kind of has different paths. I think the old Angel Beatdown is still very viable. Um, we're not seeing anyone really play it. I think maybe that's just because people got kind of bored of playing it for over a year. Um, Now it's kind of changed from Alana and Buria Lantern Leaflore into uh, like Ephemera Castle, maybe Paladin's Parable. Um,
Maybe Mistry Driftwood.
yeah, Mistray Driftwood. The tricky thing about angels and why beatdown is just so prevalent in general. Like, similar problem with Chrono is that they don't have a strict mechanic or kind of rule set that they follow. There's no direct synergy between them, so they can really just all function independently. If I unsummon your castle, oh no, like I can just play castle again. But if I unsummon somebody's chief bandit as their, they just put massive piles of energy on them, that's a huge portion of their strategy just bounced out of the thing. Oh, you play Bastion, I'll unsummon it. You play any kind of all the Shardfolk and Treefolk have really strong synergies amongst themselves that, if disrupted, can really hurt the deck. But Angel Beatdown just doesn't. Angel Beatdown's just all about cards that have value individually.
Especially since the main like beatdown frame is just 12 to 14 symmetries, and then your creatures, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, you can you can even go harder than that. Last season the top three were 14 symmetry. Two of the decks had 7 creatures, one had 6. That was the top three worlds 2018 deck list, which is on the Reddit. Um, I think that for beatdown in general, that seems to be like a very common kind of ratio is a 7 creature 14 split, 14 symmetry split, which kind of makes sense. Symmetries, having a bunch of creatures is dangerous because putting creatures on piles of 1 energy is dangerous. If you draw 3 creatures and 3 energy, your options are very limited. It's either play each creature on a pile of 1 and potentially make it super easy for my opponent to just leech 1, or Cataclysm or Guild Warfare or Tanglewood Snag, whatever energy destruction at all, just destroys them, or put 1 creature on like a pile of 2 and leave an energy pile blank for a potential glimpse, but then you have 2 dead cards in your hand until your next turn that aren't helping you against whatever your opponent's playing.
Right.
So I think that's why like the 17-14 split is has been so efficient, is because you have 14 cards that can effectively be played no matter what your hand is.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna play Vortex? Well, I guess I'll just respond with Leech, Reversion, and an Invoke. Well, I have no cards left, so your Vortex doesn't hurt me now.
Yeah.
Besides that, I think we have seen quite a few people play with things like Common Angel, Common Dragon. I think those are kind of where I would put like in the B tier. They're decent, they're fun, but they're not really winning competitively. I think Dragon might actually be in a more impressive place than Common Angel. It's still not game winning or competition winning, but it's still in a pretty nice spot.
Yeah, I've only seen Common Dragon Flood would be the one that you're mentioning, because there's also Ember Shard Dragon and the Clock Dragon, and then
No way. That is D tier, dude.
Horncrest Cloud Gorger.
Yeah,
and you have to forcibly mill your deck just to destroy 1 energy.
What's unfortunate is that was an attempt to do kind of what we've just been complaining about, which was to make dragons actually have synergies, whereas angels and kind of chronos don't really seem to have a whole lot. They're very individual. They're trying to make it so that dragons actually do like work together and to accomplish like a larger theme, which in this case would be destroying energy. But unfortunately, like none of them are good. Now, and the ruling on the one that when it discards from your hand, it comes into play. The ruling on that killed that card. I mean, absolutely destroyed it.
Killed that card, and also pretty much killed the hopes and dreams of the player that was playing it.
Yeah, because like that deck, that the concept of you could build a beatdown deck where you're utilizing cards that are destroying your hand, like Vortex or Thoughts of Progress or whatever. And oh, look, I also get to trigger this ability, and it worked so well. It was such a really balanced and good card until they changed it so that it doesn't count as the card that you discarded, which I understand, like the wording ultimately kind of directs you to that, but man, like if ever there was an opportunity to errata something, I feel like that could have been it.
Yeah.
I hope they make a new card that has different wording and does that.
Yeah, that was potentially. I mean, the deck that was running in was amazing, and as soon as they changed that ruling on that, it just completely nerfed the entire deck. I like how you don't need bans or rotations to nerf decks, just erratas to rules.
Yeah.
Certain rulings just nuke an entire deck.
The upside to Ember Shard is that it still works against the Vortex, because Vortex isn't requiring a discard to play or anything like that. But
it turns the whole hand.
It's just not the same. It's just not. Not the same. So I don't know. Poor dragons. This next set isn't really going to give them any support either. So I have a feeling Common Dragon Flood Burn is like the best we're going to see from them for a while. Um, it's kind of funny that like Dragana's Citadel and whatever the other the card they play, it's kind of funny that these two like uncommon common cards are like the best dragon support instead of the rare dragons that were added. I just think it's funny.
Yeah. Oh man.
Um, but hey, that's how it goes. It actually makes me happy that CC was a phenomenal set, and I think more evidence to that is the fact that some of the uncommon and common symmetries actually do see competitive use, and they actually are pretty viable. I think that's pretty sick.
Yeah, there was definitely some things I wish they would have touched on, particularly the dimensional monsters. Since the dimensional creatures are a favorite of mine. Um,
Oh yeah, for
granted,
sure.
granted they don't do really much except move energy back and forth.
Yeah,
Um,
dimensionals
I,
is in a really bad place.
I just love their concept. In fact, when I saw their art and then I saw the Chrono art, I thought that the dimensionals were going to be like
Mm.
in the story, like the counterpart to Chronos.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah,
Um, you know,
because
this
one's creating a portal naturally, and the other one's tearing through.
Yeah, and true from a
Yeah,
different like reality. I think the next set, maybe they're they had dimensionals is what they I think what they would consider a secondary archetype, similar to order.
right.
I think if I recall correctly, this next set is getting a tiny bit of order support. I'm hopeful that dimensional does too. My concern is like Dimensional Phoenix. I think was obviously intended to be like a big dimensional support card, and it just wasn't. It was a floppy pancake of a card. Um,
Yeah, it's too dependent on the other symmetries that are in this deck. You have to like Guild Ascension really needs to be paired with that card.
but even then, like the problem is you're not gaining anything. Like I understand the
Yeah,
idea is you like attack with something or you do something and then you move the energy over. So it's but like then why wouldn't I just play something that just gave me the energy? Because it's only one energy. Like I might as well just play something that gave me one energy. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, it's more to Beacon of Worlds your opponent's energy to a blank pile so that their creatures die. But then just to do that, you have to play one creature for each movement, unless you have two Phoenixes on board.
yeah, yeah,
And then again, it's two energies you're moving at a time.
yeah. It's just not. I think Dimensional Phoenix is ultimately its problem is it's just not strong enough. Like maybe if it was move two energy, that'd be all right.
And then
Um,
you'd have two in play, and you play one dimensional creature, and you swing. You just shift four energy to a blank pile, and just
yeah.
for one creature you put down, it just kills another creature. Just boom, boom, boom. Yeah,
Now,
that'd be
can
fun.
can Dimensional Phoenix be saved? Is an interesting question because I'm sure they could release a new card that says like maybe it's a creature symmetry whatever and it's played and like oh move an energy and a creature to a different creature pile on the same side of the field and then add an energy to a creature. They could do something that does have strength to it that does make dimensional a playable archetype, but can Dimensional Phoenix itself be saved and returned to that archetype? Because ultimately, Dimensional Phoenix is weak in the dimensional deck.
As much as it pains me, yeah, you're right. Hopefully, dimensional doesn't become a forgotten archetype
Yeah, I mean
because
it's one
there
of
is
their
lots of potential with them.
it's one of their first ones too. I mean, you have Dimensional Desperado, right, and Dimensional Dragon.
It's
Sure.
literally the first card you
Yeah.
see in the Birth of Creation Angel deck.
Yep. And you know, there are some cards in the game that specifically directly call out and support other cards, right? Banner of Valor is an example of this. It'd be kind of neat to have a symmetry that's like Phoenix Egg or something like that, or Dimensional Egg, and it specifically targets Dimensional Phoenix, and it's like, play this card, it stays in play until its effect resolves. Whenever a Dimensional Phoenix you control would leave play, discard this card instead and leave Dimensional Phoenix in play on, whatever pile of energy or something.
Even then, even that effect's kind of
Well, no, I mean you could say like
meh.
put it into play in a pile of 3, like from your energy deck, or you know put it into play on a blank pile of energy you have and add an energy to it or something like that.
How about when the phoenix dies, the egg hatches, and you get to search another phoenix in your deck and put it in play?
What if they're both in the graveyard?
Well, then,
I mean, it could just say search your
nuts to
deck.
you.
It could say search your deck or graveyard for one.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, yeah. Unfortunately, dimensionals is just non-existent. And honestly, like from Discord and from pictures that we've seen at other tournaments, I haven't seen a single soul running this archetype. I think it's just that kind of unanimously agreed that it's just not there yet. Hopefully, set 5 it gives it something, a little booster shot, I guess. Because set
Yeah.
5, like our hopes right now, set 5 is confirmed to obviously provide massive support to Chrono as its kind of like debut album. It's going to provide some support to Tree Folk and Shard Folk, which is I'm assuming this is going to be kind of their final set. Um, it's going to provide then some small support to secondary archetypes, and I think the general community hope is it supports machine, it supports order, and it supports dimensional. I can't really think of any other archetype that currently exists, right?
Right.
And besides like an actual just creature type. Now, even then, I mean, like there really aren't any other creature types right now that have like a theme going yet. So, yeah, I mean, I'm expecting that's kind of what we'll see. Maybe we'll see like 2 or 3 cards for those, or maybe just 2 or 1. I don't know, but yeah, we'll see. All right, so moving on to our final topic for today. I think, unless do you have anything you want to talk about season 3, the 2v2 format?
You know, I have no idea how I'm going to tackle. I feel like I'll have a better idea of how to think up tag decks
Mm-hmm.
once I see all the cards in the set.
Yeah, I mean, if you're actually building a deck with a partner versus just going and finding a partner at random and pairing up, right? It really, it's real like you definitely have the opportunity to come up with some cool stuff, but it's very hard to even theorize what would work.
Yeah, so I'll hold my thoughts until I actually see uh, the dimension that what is it that disappeared?
Yeah.
Yeah, the dimension that disappeared when it actually drops. Uh, yeah, we'll see what support the that set has for tag games.
Yep. All right, so yeah, our last topic today is going to be our Harmony Rares overpowered. Um, I'm not sure, I don't particularly feel like the community is leaning either way on this one. I do see sometimes people in Discord kind of give them a lot of credence, and obviously they're expensive because they're case stoppers, so they're not exactly like easy to just grab. Um, what are your thoughts on the Harmony Rares, Alex?
I would say that the most underutilized cards in this current set, mainly because they're behind such a massive paywall.
Yeah, and I would kind of take it a step further and just say like they're really not they're really not like that. From my opinion, they're really not that great. I think I think they are cool in the sense that they're like a twist on the game and they make the game a little bit more unique. But with the exception of maybe Abyssal Ridge, which is the kind of the blue freeze Harmony Rare, they just they struggle to really be a part of the deck, which I think in a way, like as you mentioned, a paywall. I guess that's fine because you don't want a game to be too pay to win. It's kind of supposed to be this casual game that anybody can kind of pick up and join in and to say like, well, you're not going to win if you don't have a $120 Harmony Rare to boost your deck with, right?
Yeah. That was the main thing that when they came out, I was like, wait a minute, you're basically saying that not everyone's going to get this.
Yeah.
That kind
And
of hurt my feelings a little bit.
and well, and fortunately, as we've seen, like I mean, pretty much nobody's won any of our tournaments with them, even though people bring them. I think I won once with Abyssal Ridge, but even then, it wasn't. Some of the major players weren't there that week.
Yeah,
Um,
you were the only one that actually topped with a Harmony Rare.
yeah, because they're so finicky. You know, you have the one that's you have the Eventide one, which is if either player dies, it blows up the field, comes in with 10 energy, and you live with 1 life point, right? So you have that one, and the tricky thing about that one is it benefits both players a lot. Like you can't the best thing you can do, the best kind of deck you can build with that is a deck where you intentionally kill yourself to quickly get it out and play, but even then they just unsummon it and now you're alive with 1 life point, you know? And I think at that point like it's such a janky card because it's like it's an all or nothing card. It's I am either going to win this turn or I lose this turn. And I think when you're looking at it that way, you're like, I might as well just play a different deck.
Yeah, I'd say the only like viable one is the reveal one because it lets you reveal a card instead of draw, I believe.
I think it lets you reveal the top card of either player's deck at the start of each turn.
See right there, and then you combine it with Lingus, you're just getting more reveals off each turn.
Yeah, let's see. The green one is continuous effect at the start of a player's turn. You can reveal the top card of their main deck or their opponent's main deck, um, and that's pretty much it. And when it's flipped to the creature side, each player loses life points equal to the number of their own creatures in play. It goes to the side of the field of the player who flipped it with energy equal to their life points. Its awakened effect is probably the weakest one. Um, it's just a really kind of janky thing to do. The best you can, I think your best case scenario, right, is you get your opponent, if you're running a reveal, let's say you've triggered Harbinger Mushroom or something a few times, maybe attacked, got them down to like 4 or 3, and then let them play 3 creatures out and then trigger this. So it comes in, they take 3 damage, it can't be countered, so they just lose the game. But even then, I've never seen anyone really attempt to do that. I think I think actually, I always say like Abyssal Ridge is the best Harmony Rare. I think in a way, in a very subtle way, this is the best because it truly only benefits you. If you're running Reveal and your opponent isn't, they don't benefit from this card almost at all. Um, Whereas with Abyssal Ridge, even if you're running Shardfolk, you still have to be afraid that your opponent might trigger the Abyssal Ridge Awaken. And at that point, they permanently freeze everything in play. They get this massive creature with an insane amount of energy, and you could be toast. Shardfolk decks,
unless it gets unsummoned.
right? Shardfolk decks obviously benefit from the most because even if the creature gets unsummoned, your Chief Bandits now have a ton of frozen cards in play to benefit from. Which is why I always think of Abyssal Ridge as being the better Harmony Rare. But I think in a sense, this is the better Harmony Rare because the Sleeping Sanctum is the best Harmony Rare because it really can only benefit one player, the player that's running Reveal. But it's not as impactful as Abyssal Ridge, which has a massive impact on the game, but can potentially be used by either player. And then
Right.
ultimately the Eventide Paradoxical Planet one is it's just both players just benefit from it too evenly. I mean, you also have the problem that card gives each player an extra energy every time it's someone's turn.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about it. When
Yeah,
my opponent brings it,
it makes the game go like bonkers fast if played weirdly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think they're overpowered. I think, I do think
For,
it's
for
weird.
for what they are and the price behind them,
Yeah, they could have been way
maybe
worse.
maybe they're not powerful enough.
Yeah, I mean they could have been way worse. They could have
Yeah,
easily been like an I win card. Um,
they are
uh,
definitely a very nice collector's item
yeah, I
at the
mean,
very least.
well, and the weird thing is when I first saw them, I was like, is this going to be a like just an optional game mode? Is it going to be competitive? I think I was told that it's just going to be an optional thing. But then when they were revealed at the pre-release, they said, nope, it's competitive. It's going to be in official tournaments. I'm like, ooh, huh, okay. So and I think maybe their thought process between then and then was like, well, people really hate the first turn advantage. Maybe we'll give the second player something to do, which is decide if they use a harmony rare or not. But yeah, I don't know. I, I don't think they're tremendously strong, as you said, considering the price point for them. Obviously, they can definitely have an impact on the game. The green and blue one more certainly more than the neutral one. But yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
and for anyone interested, they have confirmed that currently there's no plans to release Harmony Rares with any future sets.
So you can all take a big sigh of relief.
Yeah, I mean, my guess, my assumption is that as certain archetypes become really prevalent, they might release a Harmony Rare associated with that archetype, right? Because Sleeping Sanctum's for Treefolk Reveal, Abyssal Ridge is for Shardfolk Freeze. Eventide is just kind of a neutral, I guess you'd say like angel dragon kind of card. So like, will we eventually see one released for maybe as like maybe the hope is okay, we get Chrono established, we get machines established. Maybe they get like dimensional or order established or some other archetype established. Then they do another set with three new harmony rares, one for each of those. You know?
Yeah.
So we'll see where that
I,
goes.
I wouldn't call them a massive success, but um, honestly, it was a very cool and fun idea, and I would like them to keep experimenting with new types of things like this. I think it's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, and everyone was kind of like, "Oh, that's so cool." The only funky part is like they're like it's just ultimately the kind of monetization, the fact that some people do feel like it was a step in the pay to win department. And when they talk about like, oh, we added this kind of cool, like it's a case topper and it's this giant metal card. It definitely seemed like a novelty thing, which is why I was surprised it was going to be a official, you know, part of the game. But you know, whatever. It hasn't really affected the game too much, at least. It sucks because people complain about it, right? Um,
I would love to see someone make a deck list with this and take it to qualifier or worlds.
I thought about it. I mean, I'm using Shardfolk. I thought about bringing Abyssal Ridge, but ultimately it just adds like another layer of kind of stress to your decision making, and it just makes it hard.
it, and it gives you when you roll or you win the rock paper scissors and you get to go first, it gives you just have a slight moment of yeah, and then you're like
Yeah. Uh,
now your opponent gets to go no, you
yeah.
are not using the harmony rare now, because the person who gets chosen to go second gets to choose whether or not to use the harmony rare or not. So they can just, I mean, if it's your deck, I'm always going to choose not to use it. You
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I still get to go first. So.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so I think that's about it for this episode. Alex, do you have anything you want to add?
Nah, I think we about covered it all.
All right, well, thanks a lot for joining me. I appreciate it, and I hope everyone listening at home enjoyed this quick episode, or not quick episode, but early episode of the Thought Stream. And I'll see you
Yeah.
guys next time.
See ya.